Hey, what's up, toy fans, and happy 4th of July. This is Doc Johnson coming to you live once again for a part 3 of my collection tour. And thank you for those that have kind of tuned in. That's the whole reason I did this, is to be able to share my collection with everybody else, especially other people who collect action figures and toys and just have the stories behind them. I've so loved over this past year, really a couple of years, when I was seriously looking into YouTube and seeing how just many other collectors are out there like myself, and it's so much fun to share with you guys and see what you guys collect, hear the stories of why you collect it, why those things are your favorite, and how you display things. I really took an interest in that, and it just inspired me. So I had a previous toy room, and then this past March, before the pandemic, I actually bought a house, a much bigger one, so I had lots more room to expand my toy collection. I've been having fun these last few days uploading a couple of videos. I've uploaded part 1 and 2. This is going to be part 3, and then I'll be followed up with a part 4, and that'll be my tour. Again, like I mentioned before, it's a work in progress. I've got room to expand. I still got some things to do to tweak it, because let's face it, guys, we're never really done with things, and that's kind of part of the fun. So where we left off, if you had tuned in last time, is we were walking down Star Wars Street at the end of part 2, and we ended at Comic Book Corner, and we made a right on Comic Book Corner, and now we end up in what I like to call the Hall of Heroes room. And this Hall of Heroes is dedicated to all things, of course, Batman. Batman is my all-time favorite comic book character, and also his friends in the DC universe and the Justice League, and that also includes G.I. Joe, because they are the real American heroes, and then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because they are the heroes in a half shell. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to theme all of those up into one kind of central location. So upon further ado, here is the Hall of Heroes section of my collection tour. And as we start down the row, again, probably 80% of this room is dedicated to Batman and the different lines and things, the collection lines that happen with Batman. Again, anybody who was around in the summer of 1989 will never forget. I was 15 years old then. Batmania hit with the Tim Burton film, and it was just an amazing. The marketing campaign, the logo and emblem was splashed everywhere, and it was just such an exciting time. You couldn't turn on the radio without hearing a Prince song from the Batman movie soundtrack. Great times. And here we are, full circle. Here now, all the buzz on the internet is Michael Keaton coming back to play Batman. So it's like we get to relive what a very, very cool summer time that was. And again, great line of action figures that come, and this renewed interest in Batman happened that we had not seen since the early days of the Adam West series. So his first little shelf is kind of a mishmash of different things. Some of my favorite movies, the Dark Knight movie, and then of course Batman Returns, the very, very cool sequel. So I pick up some of those metal Urtel figure lines. Here's just a few scattered things that came from either the Cake Toppers and or from McDonald's. They did a Batman Returns Happy Meal series, and then they also did a Batman the Animated Series figure series. And I love Batman the Animated Series. It's absolutely one of my top 2 favorites, along with He-Man. Love that series, and so anything that has to do with that, I usually try to pick up. And as we kind of move down this tiny section, I have these great set of Pepsi series glasses that came out in the 70s from Pizza Hut. Man, I long for those days again, to have those collective commemorative glasses. Anybody around that time remembers. This one on the end, this Batman one, is actually from the 60s series, but the rest are from the 76 through 78 series. I'd love to get the rest of them. They're a little bit hard to find, but what a great series. So I got a little section dedicated to that. And again, like I mentioned before, in all my videos, I always have room for expansion, so you can see some empty modules. Got some cool little Batman handcuffs there. The only time I've ever seen those things. Those are vintage, probably, I think there's a date on them, early 80s. But Batman handcuffs, gotta love the artwork on those things. Very, very cool. Still in the package and unpunched. Look at that, unpunched. And I just came across them and on one of the toy shows, and just had to have them. And followed by a little the Bat Missile model set. So that is the first little section. And I'm going to start with this little end, and I will actually end with this. So I'm going to kind of wrap around this way. As the door we came in, again, we made a right at Comic Book Corner, and then this is the next hallway if you're visualizing the entire map of everything from my last 2 collection videos. First section I like to start with is the Dark Knight collection, which came out because of the movie 1989 and lasted through the early part of 1991. Weren't a lot of figures in this series. You know what you see here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 figures in the original series. A little short on the villains. It only came with 2 different Jokers. That Joker that you see on the top is called Knockout Joker. He's probably the most valuable out of that series. Either had to do because he was short printed or because he was in such demand, because it was the first Joker figure since the 1986 release of Superpowers that people just scrambled to get it, which made him harder to find. But he's the most sought after and probably the priciest one out of the whole bunch. Again, they had a list of carded regular series figures, and then they had the boxed deluxe series figures that came a little bit larger, like the one you see there in the middle. These 3 here came in really, really cool boxes. Again, like I've mentioned in videos, I love the backdrops to kind of represent that actual thing. Like you'll see the central colors, black and gold. I also found that cool calendar from 1989 to put behind it. And then I used the card art as the backdrops, and I think it really makes the figures look really nice and stand out. Underneath that, of course, is the sequel that came out in 1992, Batman Returns. Also Tim Burton came back. This time it brought us Catwoman and the Penguin. Again, it had more figures in this series, twice as many, so they expanded their roster a little bit, including some KB Toys exclusives like Polar Blast Batman that you see here. He's one of the ones that were only available in KB Toy Stores, which those that may be too young to know, KB Toy Store was a very, very popular chain of toy stores across the U.S. You'd usually find them in shopping malls, things like that. And then unfortunately, like many, many stores, they finally went under sometime in the mid-90s. And then all that was left at that time was Toys R Us, which sadly has also disappeared. So those were exclusives to KB. A little bit harder to find, but again, this entire series, not too bad. So anybody looking to collect vintage Batman figures, this particular series is fairly easy to find, and you can still find a mint on card and or loose complete. I love the loose complete stuff because I like to display stuff with the card art still. You can see in the back I still use the card backs as the backdrops. It makes it look really cool. That is all these shelves that you see in all of my videos are custom made by me, and of course black is a good neutral color. It makes whatever you're doing kind of pop out. And nice little skyline. I found some different things online. Again, I like intimate details. This is a great line to collect, and again, it's not too unaffordable for those looking for good, reasonable priced vintage figures from early 90s. Gave us the Penguin, gave us Catwoman, and gave us some Penguin Commandos. The Catwoman was a nice new sculpt. The Penguin, unfortunately, was just a repaint from the old Superpowers line. They just painted him a different one, so he does not look like the Danny DeVito version. But that is what we got. This also featured Robin, and again, I think this line came out before when there were talks in the movie that Robin was going to make an appearance, and they even had some storyboards and things written out. They even had a contract with Marlon Wayans and paid him money. Warner Brothers paid him money to be the new Robin, and then they scrapped that idea. Burton did, and he was still paid anyway, but he never appeared in the film. So they scrapped the whole Robin idea, and this figure made it through and is actually part of the Batman Returns line. All right, underneath there is the 1995 follow-up, Joel Schumacher taking over the reins, Batman Forever. Came out in 1995. This gave us even more. Again, they expanded the line even further. And this gave us a brand new Batman, Val Kilmer, a brand new Robin, Chris O'Donnell. Gave us new villains, Riddler, Jim Carrey, Two-Face, Tommy Lee Jones. And the movie did really well theatrically, but like a lot of Batman fans, they were not real big fans of this particular movie, especially after the success of the Burton-Keaton lineup. Even Keaton himself, who was supposed to star in it, ended up not, because he was not real crazy about the screenplay, but it became almost brighter and colorful and kind of back to the cartoonish stuff that came around in the because of the 60s series. I think that was the style that Joel Schumacher was going for, and hence we got the zany, like I like to call Batman Forever. Still kind of fun to watch if you're just looking for something lighthearted, but it is not one of my favorite Batman moments. But I did like the figures. You get a wide range of them. They look really good on display. Again, that backdrop as opposed to the Batman Returns and the Dark Knight. You can see I use a lot of greens and yellows because that was kind of the central color theme throughout most of the merchandising material and or the card backs. Again, you notice color schemes, I kind of depend on what the card back colors actually were. So again, attention to detail. You can see how the card backs really look nice, you know, behind the figures. I think so. Again, this particular line, there are no one or two chase figures that are just crazy expensive and all that. So if you're looking for another line that you could actually get and complete of a vintage Batman line, I would suggest this Batman Forever. They're still pretty plentiful and not in high demand, so the prices are nice and low, and there isn't a one crazy figure that's super ultra rare in this line. So that would be, you know, one of my suggestions if you're looking to kind of get started in the hobby. Not a bad way to start. And then down below, Batman, we've got the old Toy Biz. You know, Toy Biz was in competition with Kenner at the time, especially during their first Batman movie. So they actually made a line of what was called DC Superheroes. Came out in 1990 and lasted for about 1 full year, but it ended up being 2 different series. And again, if you'll notice, they used a lot of the same molds as the very, very extremely popular Superpowers line that had long since been canceled. So you see a lot of similarities, but when you get up close and notice, the figures are much different. Some of the molds are the same, like the Wonder Woman is very much the same mold, and then also the Flash and the Robin and the Penguin, of course, and the Mr. Freeze are all kind of the same, but the rest, it's kind of a bigger, bulkier look to him. The Aquaman is the same. You got new characters like Bob the Goon, which was kind of a nice add-in. You've got the first and only version of Lex Luthor that looks like that. You've got Beaten Batman in kind of his Keaton style to maintain with the series. Superman, you've got the Riddler. That's the unique version of the Riddler. The only version of Two-Face that comes in kind of an orange and blue of any series, so that's kind of cool and unique to it. You got 2 different Flash figures. You got the regular one, and then you got the one in the with the little running clouds underneath him. You got Green Lantern, you got Hawkman. Again, I splashed it up with some color, and behind there you'll see that's what the original card backs look like behind Flash there. They're kind of a gold, bronze, great artwork on them. There's behind the Robin, you can see the Flash card back. Again, really awesome. Very, very similar in design to the Superpowers, although not as good a detail, and the line was not as popular, which is why it only lasted one particular season. If you're wondering why Shazam, anybody catching that, Shazam was actually not part of this particular line. That is a custom figure that I used. I used an extra Superman that I had from the Man of Steel line that you're going to see here lately, and then I turned him into a Shazam because I thought Shazam would be a cool add-in, DC character to add in for this particular line. Again, these figures are not real difficult to find and still pretty plentiful even on card. They're not too out of price range. I think the most expensive one out of the series, I believe, is the Superman, and I could be wrong, but I think he is. And again, you're not talking by much. We're not talking hundreds of dollars here. So again, it's a nice vintage line if you want to collect some DC characters. Much easier and much probably cheaper to get for anyone than, say, the Superpowers line, which you'll see later on too that I have that is a very, very valuable and has very high price pieces in it, but not so bad. Again, room for expansion. I've got an extra shelf down here for some more Batman and DC superheroes as they come, but for now I fill them in with my different mugs and things like that. And again, gift wrapping paper. That's all it is, guys, behind there. Gift wrapping paper, don't forget, makes awesome backdrops for figures. Just a little tip, and you can buy, I think I paid $2 or $3 for that particular roll, and you'll see more of that particular roll of a Batman paper throughout the Hall of Heroes there. But easy, cheap way to give yourself your figures a nice backdrop behind your shelving. So don't underestimate things like that. Wrapping paper has great artwork and will really make your figures stand out. Next, as we move along, we go up to the probably worst movie in the Batman series for all Batman fans. Yes, I'm talking about Batman and Robin, which was a huge disappointment for many, many reasons. Again, Joel Schumacher. We had a new Batman with George Clooney. We had the same Robin with Chris O'Donnell, and they expanded now to 3 villains. You had Bane, you had Poison Ivy, and Mr. Freeze, and the seemingly, confusingly miscast Mr. Freeze, that's for sure. But, again, very cartoonish. I did like the figures. Again, they took the same molds that they used for the Batman Forever line, and then they did some repaints, which are always kind of a little bit annoying when you're a completist like myself. and they gave us probably 10 or 11 more figures than they did even in the Batman and Robin line, or the Batman Forever line, excuse me. But we did get some different variations, some different color schemes, and of course the new villains, which is Poison Ivy and Mr. Freeze, and I think probably the best figure out of the whole series is this Bane. I think most toy fans would agree that he's probably the best representation. Very, very cool looking figure in the whole line. I thought he was probably the best one. Some of the 2-packs were pretty good. Again, they came with some very, very large figures in this lot. As you can see, sometimes you have to get a little creative with your space, if you notice. And again, the color scheme for this particular line of figures was red and black, so I tried to incorporate a lot of red and black. And again, small details, like this is the edge of the shelf. I took the emblem and the title frame from some of the card backs, extra ones that I had, and they became nice little title cards on the front of my shelf. So again, I spare no detail when it comes to that, because it really, something so small really makes things stand out. And then lots of red in the black, which is really, really a nice blend of colors there. You can see I'm actually still missing 2 figures in this set. One of them is more rare and harder to find. It's called Ultimate Armor Mr. Freeze. For some reason, he has gone really, really up in price. I'm not sure why, but he will soon be a part of my collection. Then I am missing one of the 2-packs, the Guardians of Gotham City 2-pack, which is also pretty impressive price tag. I think it's up over $100, and there's several figures in here that are now topping the $100 mark. So for some reason, and again, I'd love to hear from somebody that knows a lot more about this than I do, on why of all the lines, especially the ones I just mentioned from Dark Knight to Batman and Robin, why the Batman and Robin line, several figures are really been jumping in price over the last few months. So if you see some of these, I would suggest grabbing them, especially at good prices, because for whatever reason, they're going up in value. Maybe it has to do, my theory is because it was an unpopular movie and they had a huge marketing blitz and all of these toys, and because the movie was disappointing, maybe kids at that time, people weren't buying the toys, so they ended up with overstock, and then they end up just kind of dumping, which has now made them harder to find in the secondary market. That's just my theory. I could be completely wrong. So if somebody did research that and would love to comment on, I would love to hear that, because it'd be interesting. But yeah, a lot of really high price. 2 of the 2-packs that you see here, like up here in the front, the Bane and the Batman and the Robin and the Poison Ivy, and then over here in the backdrop, you'll see the Batman and Robin in a very, very cool silver and black uniforms. It's about a $150 piece and all that. And again, $12, $13 when I actually bought them. So they've really, really gone up. So pretty impressive. And that is Batman and Robin. Next we move further down, and this is a very cool, very underrated series that I don't see get a lot of love and attention on YouTube. So I want to represent anybody else that loves this line. This came out in 1998 and lasted through 2000. It is the JLA is the name of this line, based on the Justice League of America. There was a comic book series that came out at the same time called JLA, which was kind of a rebirth, and did very, very well. It was very popular with readers and collectors, myself included. They introduced characters like Prometheus in the comic book storylines, but it was very popular there in 98 through 2000 for a couple of years. So they went ahead and did a line of figures based on that particular comic book line. These are very, very cool and unique because they not only come with a stand, but also a card back that you could cut out, and it made like a little mini comic back stand, behind the figures, and I thought that was a really cool added bonus. This particular line of figures also came with what was called a box sets, commemorative box sets. There were 4 of them, and inside of those you got, I believe it was 5 different figures, and that line is unique because it gave us the first line of Teen Titans figures. One of the box sets had a character named Impulse right there that you see. It gave us Superboy. One of the box sets was very unique and has been going up in price because it contained a Joker. This is one of the only molds of this particular Joker. There are a lot of Joker collectors out there, but I don't see them with this guy in their collection, so jump it. That is box collection number 3 or 4, I believe. I'll have to go back now that I think about it. I believe it's box collection number 3 that has the Joker in it. And then again, Lex Luthor, nice villain that also came in that same box set with the Joker. Had 3 different versions of Batman, 2 different versions of Superman, including the classic red and blue Supermans from that were as a result of the Death of Superman series that came out in '93. This was the Man of Energy, that storyline where he split into two different ones. Again, gave us different characters like the Huntress. First time that we see the Huntress in toy form. First time we see, no, not the first time that we see Steel. I correct myself on that. He shows up in the Man of Steel line that we'll see a little bit later. It's Red Tornado, Plastic Man, always a crowd favorite. Love Plastic Man. But again, I like this line because it displays really well. Our first Atom is our first rendition of the Atom, and again, you got him as a large size, and then you get the little small one that went with it. So he was very cool, and again, he was a unique design. First time we got the Atom in toy form, and he's been around for a long time. Again, you see some customs in there slipping out. If anybody has some sharp eyes and remember this lines well, you know that I actually have 3 customized figures in this series. I'll go ahead and tell you to save you the time. Again, representing Mr. Shazam himself or Captain Marvel, depending on who you talk to and what his name is. I actually made a customized Shazam figure out of an old, I had a double of Superman, so obviously that was the best model to use, and did some repaints. I even reprinted an extra card back in the back there, and had an extra stand that I use. That way I could add Shazam to the JLA line, because he did represent the group. Then I also made a custom Bruce Wayne figure, again with the trench coat and suit, and I even did a custom backdrop of that particular famous comic where Bruce Wayne takes on the Justice League. That's a really cool storyline, by the way, number 33 that you see. And then down here I made a custom Nightwing using an old Robin, of course, as a figure, and again with his double sticks, because he was missing when they made that Teen Titans line. For some reason they did not make a Nightwing, so I made one. It's kind of fun to do. Just, I'm no artist by any means, but I do like having good representations of characters that maybe we don't see. Again, they did a Negative Zone line of figures, which you see here. And again, I know one of the guys that I follow online, his name is Justice Curry. Shout out to you, Justice. I hope you'll watch this sometime. He loves translucent figures, and I don't know if he's seen these. These came from the JLA line. He even made a chandelier in his house out of them. It's really cool if you get a chance to look at his stuff. But the Negative Zone figures, this was based on a storyline where there's an alternate version of each of the superheroes in what's called the Negative Zone, and they're all kind of clear plastic translucent figures, and their emblems are different. As you'll notice, they have like evil. This is like their evil personas. And again, nice backdrops. I use the card art that you see here, the JLA. That's what was on the top of the cards, and that is the JLA line. Next is, like I said, probably my top love, along with He-Man, is my ever favorite Batman the Animated Series. Love this, best cartoon probably that's ever made in my opinion, and they look great on a shelf. I love the Batman animated line. It gets its own corner display piece, so to speak, because there are a lot of figures in this line. I'm actually not quite done, but I'm getting close. I'm all the way through what was called Mission Masters 4, and then I'm getting into when they switched over to Hasbro, and Hasbro made a bunch of Walmart exclusives. They did a bunch of repaints in 2 and 3 packs, multi-packs. So I'm down to just a handful of figures in this line. Again, there were several regular series, started in 1992 and really lasted about 10 years. It went all the way to about 2002 when you're counting the Hasbro run that Walmart did, and the multiple 2 packs and 3 packs. Sorry about that. But this is a great line because it gave us all of those great and classic villains and those great voices, those great storylines, and kind of just that noir theme, that artwork. A little bit of a vintage style, but at the same time very modern, and it was just an amazing series. Again, this is all of them through Mission Masters 4 and on into the Hasbro line, which was a little bit different, but will blend in nicely with this collection. So within the next, probably by the end of the summer, I'll have the rest of them. That started all off with Mr. Combat Belt Batman. Was the first one released, and again, he's probably the best in the whole series because he is what Batman looked like when the series got started. So he's going up in price. I think he's probably one of the more expensive ones. Some of the repacks have gotten a little expensive over the years. This is a very challenging line to try to collect and get them all, but a very cool challenge. My advice, start with a checklist. You can get them online. I actually created customized checklists for every one of these figure lines you see in all of this tour that I'm showing you on, is I have checklists. So when I go to toy shows, I carry around a little book with me, and that way I know exactly what I have and what I'm looking for to complete lines. I have them organized and itemized by series and the date. That way I can start, all right, I want to try to finish series 1 and then move on to series 2 or vice versa and all that. So that gives me, it's just a fun way to kind of enhance the hobby and the thrill of the hunt and things like that. So that is the Batman animated series line, and again it kind of curves around the corner here, and again nice backdrop. That is the board game, a 3D board game that I found at a toy show. Awesome, makes a great backdrop. I've played it a few times. It's also very fun. Again, you can see the artwork in the back is the actual cards of the figures that came in, and they made a lot of different card backs and a lot of different art, and I wanted to make sure and represent every single unique card back that I found. Splash in a few things, like that's a Batman toothbrush right there, and the floss case, again, like 11 cents. Well, I found those just in a bucket at a flea market. So many cool things you can find, really enhance your collection. And again, empty shelves to make room for the ones that I'm still needing. And then as we come up here, DC Collectibles came along and made the larger series, the Batman the Animated Series, that came out just a year or two ago, which was very, very exciting. Love it. You can see a splash with that Batman Animated Series logo, and the symbol in the back really makes those figures look really, really cool. This is the new line that came out. Super detailed. We got different characters like Bullock and Commissioner Gordon, and just amazing. I don't have many of these. I have maybe half of the line, but as you can see, some empty spots, but I plan on completing that collection very, very soon because they just look amazing. Wish they'd make some more, but I do believe that they're actually finished, you know, with this line, which will make it easier for me because there's not as many to collect. Of course, the hard one in this series is the Renee Montoya, and she came in that Guardian, or that Gotham City Jail 5-pack with that guy right there, Mr. Freeze, and Poison Ivy, and several others. So she's very, very pricey right now. But other than that, I think they're pretty reasonable as far as prices go. But what a great line. Again, you can see a lot of empty shelving that will fit the rest of my animated series collection, both the large 6-inch size and the 3 3/4. And again, I've got the backdrops ready to go. Those are all just the box art and the card art that I have from the actual figures, and so they are ready to go just to be filled in as I complete it. Next, we have another really cool cartoon that came out called the Justice League and the Justice League Unlimited. And there are tons and tons and tons of figures in this line, and do I mean tons. And this will be an extremely challenging line to get, but it's going to be fun. They're very, very hard. I had difficulty just putting the checklist together. So many repacks and so many versions of the same character. Sometimes you have to buy, I'm already up to I think 4 or 5 Flash figures because he'll come packed with somebody else that I need, so it makes it a little bit annoying if you want to try to complete. So the best way to complete this line is for me to just keep going to toy shows and finding these guys in bins and loose. A lot of them didn't have accessories anyway, so you can pick them up, you know, loose, and they're already complete, which is nice. My only other complaint is this series does not display real well their feet. Some of them have holes, and I can use my stands for them, but most of them do not, and they end up toppling over sometimes, which is annoying, so I'm having to kind of finagle and deal with that. But you can see I staircased everything in the back, and because I like color, especially with this line, Justice League represents so many different flashy colors and all that. You'll notice some of the how I made my risers as I use Legos. Look at that. Legos, I thought, made a cool backdrop. So there's a little tip for you and an easy way to add double, and even in this case triple the space in your shelf. Use some Legos to make some risers. Little tip for you. And again, I'm ready. I've got the backdrops ready for the next series of figures. Next, we drop down everybody's favorite Mego. Megos were amazing in the 70s. It was the most popular toy line in the 70s until Star Wars came along in 77. But Mego made a great line of superheroes and also different things, TV shows, Star Trek and Dukes of Hazzard and Wizard of Oz and all that. These are all the ones that I had as a kid, and I have added a few to the collection, including some of these newer ones. Like this is from the newer Megos that they made a few years ago, so he wasn't part of the original line. Black Adam, and then Mary Marvel was also from the newer series. And then the Kyle Rayner version of Green Lantern But other than that, the rest of these are from the original 1970s run. Love all these guys a lot, especially, of course, the Batman and the Robin. Got Green Arrow down there, got a really good condition. I kept really good care of my toys. Green Arrow still has his original bow and his quiver backpack. Batgirl has her original stuff. There's Catwoman. And again, I'd like to complete that line too. There's just a few figures left in that original superheroes line. But I will be coming and collecting those soon. So you can see the empty spaces are ready to receive the newer ones. And then down here at the bottom, this is something I recently picked up because I love these things. This is from the Eagle Moss chess collection. They made a great line of heroes. They made a Marvel and they made a Superman line too, but I'm starting with just this Batman series, which was the first that came in with a commemorative book. And these figures are awesome. They're going to look great once I get the whole series. So I just built this display to house the original DC Eagle Moss chess pieces, but what a very, very cool series. Next up is the based on one of the just amazing video games that I absolutely love playing. That's the Batman Arkham series, which was Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight, and Arkham Origins. And they made a very, very, very cool line of figures. I don't have that many yet because I just kind of got into those here in the last year. But again, I made a display for it because I plan on getting that whole line. That's going to be challenging because several of these figures have gone up in price, but they look really cool. I like Professor Pig there. It's our first rendition of him. He's a very, very cool Batman villain, I think. He showed up in the comics here in the early part of the 2000s. Excuse me. And again, I got my display ready to welcome more of the Batman Arkham series figures. Again, this is the card backs that they came with right there, and you can see behind Pig himself, little card backs that came with it. Love those things. As we turn the corner, a lot of people love G.I. Joe's Real American Hero line. Was an amazing run, 82 through probably 90 something. They made a bunch of series, so this is a very, very challenging line to collect. Right now I just have series 1 and 2 are complete, which include like the things like the Silver Grand Slam and the ones that are a little bit harder to find. The Viper Pilot was a little bit getting difficult to find and more pricey. But this is series 1 and 2, and then I will slowly be working on series 3. Again, green as your color drop, along with the cards. Everybody loves these file cards. These things by themselves are very collectible, but I try to make sure and hang on to the ones I had. These are most of the figures I had as a kid, with a few exceptions. When I was trying to finish up series 2, I was able to find at a toy show. So that's what I have now. The G.I. Joe display will eventually, since it's about 500 figures in the series, we'll fill up this whole shelf before too long. There's the collector's case. A few of the smaller vehicles there. You see the water moccasin, great piece. You got some of the early G.I. Joe guns, the howitzer, the missile launcher, the Deep Six's vehicle, I believe it was called Shark, the command tower, cool stuff. And on the front here, kind of serves in front of us, of course, the G.I. Joe headquarters. One of the coolest Cobra vehicles, the Hiss. You got the G.I. Joe tank with the gun sticking out. I thought that looked cool in the headquarters, so I put him there. And then the Sky Striker, which is a really, really cool G.I. Joe villain. Look, so this shelf, which I just recently built, is going to house, I'll have more layers on it, will house a lot of the larger G.I. Joe vehicles, because those vehicles and play sets are amazing. So there's lots of floor space for those G.I. Joe vehicles as I get them. And over here we have the Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Heroes in a Half Shell. Great, great line. Again, it ran for about 10 years. One of the longer running lines and probably one of the more popular lines, especially when I go to shows. They are all about their turtles. I got into them a little bit late, which is why I don't have that many. Again, I have all but one, I think, in the first series. I'm missing the Break Fightin' Ralph is his name and all that, but I do have everybody else. Again, so this display is fairly new to my Hall of Heroes section of the collection, but I think they're going to look really cute. Turtles is a great cartoon. I'm a Leonardo fan. He's my favorite turtle out of the bunch. So you guys will have to come and tell me who your favorite turtle is. A lot of neat, unique characters. Probably went a little crazy on the repaints and repacks and different themes of the 4 turtles. I liked when they did different characters a lot. So, but other than that, it's a nice toy line. Fairly easy to find. Of course, Scratch, The character Scratch is the all-time, probably the most expensive in the line and very, very difficult to find. For just food for thought, I think he prices a pretty penny if you're able to find him. He was in short supply, I think, and so that is your lore on the turtles themselves. But again, this whole line, because it's several hundred figures in the line, I've got lots of shelf space that'll eventually cover them all. Then as we moved on, just a larger shelf to pick up some of the older Batman pieces and the Batmobiles from the different movies. I'll scroll down to there as well. In the corner I have the Batcave playset that came with the large DC Collectibles toy line. There's the Batmobile from the animated series collector's box, which is cool. I got some of the vintage record albums right there that told stories, which loved as a kid. And then the metal signs that used to come from a store called Hastings, that's since switched out of business. Those metal signs are really, really neat. I kind of hung on, just kind of decorated this little corner with just different pieces of artwork. You can see there's that wrapping paper I got behind there once again. Then we move over here. There is the very, very cool Batwing, also from the DC Collectibles Batman series. I don't have the Batmobile yet, but that is on my list. But I do have the Batcave and then also the Batwing, which looks cool, kind of hanging up. Safe space, you know, for all those that have a lot of vehicles and all that. If you're looking to save some space, hang them. From especially if you have a drop ceiling, that way you can save a lot of space and still kind of display them as you want. There's the Wayne Manor playset / Batcave that came. This one came from the Batman the Animated Series line. They actually repainted this thing several times to fit all the different lines. Like Batman and Robin has its own. I think Batman Returns has its own. So they've made several. And this was a custom flag made for me by a family member, which is really cool. And actually, just my own little secret Batcave behind there. This is actually a secret room, which is very, very cool. It's dark right now because I hadn't turned the light on, but in here is where I keep like my Magic the Gathering cards and my Dungeons and Dragons stuff that I play, like my miniatures and stuff. But it's kind of a cool little bonus to the Hall of Heroes. It's got this little corner tucked away, secret room. And as we move over here on the last wall, I've got the Superman Man of Steel, which is a very underrated line because it came out, you know, right at the same time that the Batman Forever line was coming on in mid-90s, I think 95. Again, it only lasted a couple of series, but it did have some notable characters in there. That's our first version of Steel that we got. It's also the first time we got Superman in his what's called recovery suit. First time villains like the Eradicator. He was a Toy Fair magazine exclusive, so a little bit harder to find. 2 packs that gave us Massacre. Up there gave us a very obscure villain named Conduit that you don't see very often. Here's the first Steel. Very cool figure. Also gave us King Shark and Superboy together. First time that we see King Shark. He was actually supposed to be part of this Man of Steel line, but he actually officially came out in a line what was called DC Superheroes, along with this guy Metallo and the Superman with the damaged suit. Those 4 figures were actually on the original card backs of the Man of Steel line. It shows them as being part of that line, but they did not show up until several years later in the what's called DC Universe line. But I included them in this line because that's officially where they were supposed to go, but for some reason there were delays and they didn't make it. There's Lex Luthor. So they are in this particular line because that was their original one. So there's some Superman Man of Steel trivia for you for all those that are interested. But I thought that was a neat figure line that came with little cards that you can see back there that make good card drops, these little collectible cards. That was what their card art looked like that came on the front of the plastic. And then that was the card back, the classic Superman emblem. So I use a lot of blues, reds, and of course gold to represent because of his belt, you know, for the backdrops. Then we drop and we get into the Superman animated series, which was kind of came in off the cuffs of the Batman the Animated Series line. Very popular series in its own right. I enjoyed it as well, not as much as the Batman one, but Superman was a very, very good animated series cartoon. Gave us a lot of figures. Gave us these first versions of Supergirl. Gave us a very cool Darkseid figure, which is a little bit harder to find in the series. Gave us another version of Metallo. It's the first time we ever get Bizarro in figure form. We actually get 2 different ones in this particular line. But this ran about 30 something figures in this particular line. which is very nice. I'm actually only missing one, and it's a very, very tough exclusive. It's called Cyber Crunch Superman, and he was only available again overseas, which makes him difficult. I've never actually seen it, but I've seen posts about it, and I've seen a picture of it, but I've never seen one. But other than that, it is a complete set of figures, and again, very cool and very plentiful to find. You can go to toy shows and still find several of those if you're looking to collect Superman the Animated Series. Next up, we have Legends of the Dark Knight, which was a kind of a strange line that came out in 1996. I think it had a lot to do with the popular Elseworlds comics and alternate world comic storylines that were going on in the Legends of the Dark Knight and Shadows of the Batman comic book series. But they gave us a really cool, they were larger. These were 6-inch figures, which were not done at the time, so they were kind of pioneers of that before. Now everything is 6-inch. I know they're redoing X-Men, they're redoing Spider-Man's, but these were the first back in the day, 20 plus years ago. There's Bane, which you got a very cool version of Bane, and Scarecrow. There was only 19 figures in this line. There's a Man-Bat, and again, they spared no detail. If you look carefully, even his he's got a little identification card, you know, Dr. Kurt Connors, which I think, again, very cool details. You got strange versions of Batman and Robin in various poses. There's a Joker. He actually cracks open, and it shows him clutching a bomb, which is an added effect. You got a neat version of a Clayface. It's kind of molded after the old Basil Karlo Clayface from the 60s during his original time. Again, only 19. I would have loved to have them have made more villains. Like the Riddler, would have been neat to see a Riddler and a Mr. Freeze, but alas, the line didn't make it. It was either probably canceled or they were just moving on. There was lots of Batman going on at that time. You can see the card art in the back. That's what the carded figures look like. And it makes nice little backdrops. Again, that is Batman Legends of the Dark Knight. And as we move up, again, I got some larger size Batmans from different series. Got an old Batman clock, which is cool. I got a Batman the Animated Series figure that lights up. Again, I got some empty shelf space for some more goodies as I get them. Again, that card art is the backs that came from the Superman Animated Series line. I love that skyline. It's the city of Metropolis, so how neat will that look with figures in the front? So that's why I already have those posted. And we have the Batmobile from the Superpowers line, as we're getting up into a very, very popular set of figures. There's the Lexor 7. And again, shelf space left for a couple of the other Superpowers ships that I don't have. And then this is the DC Superpowers collection that came out in 84 to 86. This was hugely popular. It was actually their most popular line after Star Wars that came out. So this was kind of a nice answer to Star Wars, which was kind of going away at that time, around that time. And then these figures came in. You got the very cool Hall of Justice. We got a wide variety of characters, which was what made it so popular at the time. Again, the most valuable one at that line, which unfortunately I don't have it, is the Cyborg figure. That one's several $100s, and he's very cool. I'll eventually get him. I've had this complete set a couple of times in my life, and I've sold them throughout the years, but I'm bound to determine this time I'm not selling it anymore, so I've recently just started, rebuying Superpowers again, and hopefully we'll complete the line. Mr. Miracle, he's got a pretty good price tag on him as well now, but that is the Superpowers line that'll eventually be filled from that space all the way up. I think there were 30 something in the line if you include the exclusive Riddler, which was only made overseas. He was actually a Green Lantern repaint. Then as we move over here, this is a line also came out in 1996 called Total Justice. The reason this line was popular is because it was the first attempt. Marvel had been making Marvel characters for a long time now. They had the Marvel Superheroes line, they had the X-Men, X-Force, the Secret Wars. They were cranking them out, and after Superpowers line there was nothing for over 10 years, and then all of a sudden Total Justice came out. So it was the first time that we got DC superheroes again. Again, our first versions of Parallax. Got a really cool version of Hawkman. Our first version of Black Lightning in figure form. Two different versions of Batman. First version of Despero. Again, these were cool. They came with some kind of strange looking extra features, but figures themselves were nice. There were only 3 series, so pretty easy to collect them all. They're not particularly difficult to get them all if you're looking for another complete set. Oh, can't forget Darkseid up there. He's very, very cool. That was his first figure form. So that is Total Justice. Next we have a very underrated line of figures, but I love this line. It's called Legends of Batman. Also in those mid-90s, man, everything was Batman in the mid-90s. This is a very, very cool line of figures. Again, kind of Elseworldish type for those that know what that means. But this was cool because it came with cards, and really it had to do, the storyline was central that there has been a Batman at every point in history and has followed along. Somebody's taken up the Bat mantle and fought against evil, so you've got all sorts of variations of Batman and a few villains, a few cooler ones like the Joker. There's neat, and you've got the Riddler, and you've got a pirate version of a Two-Face. This is cool. They did a few repaints, which again get a little bit annoying, but at least their repaints on this, I thought they did a really, really nice job. I liked, a lot of the color schemes that they were using. This line, you can see the card backs behind there, which make good backdrops. But all the way back there, I think there were, again, 4 or 5 series in this particular line. And the hardest ones to find were the last 3 that were exclusive. They were called Warner Brothers Store exclusive. There was this old store back in the day called Warner Brothers Studio Store that made a series of they were actually repaints of some of the original figures, but there were 3 different sets of it. The repaints are actually really, really cool. This was a card back for the Warner Brothers. You'll notice it because it'll be all in purple and it'll say Special Legends Edition. So they're only exclusive to the Warner Brothers Studio Store, which has long since gone belly up. So these figures are a little bit harder to find, but can still be managed with eBay, Amazon, toy shows. There's one of the repaints there. That's the Warner Brothers exclusive Laughing Man Joker figure. And then here is the one that came in the regular issue. So you can see just a different paint scheme, purple to black. So again, Legends of Batman, nice set of figures. They're from 1994 through 96 were those years. Next we have the next rendition of Batman that came out in 1999 called Batman Beyond, which is still going strong as far as a storyline. Very nice storyline for Batman. Sets Terry McGinnis has kind of taken up the mantle with an older Bruce Wayne as a mentor. I thought it was a great idea. Love the comic book. I still read it. Love the original cartoon that came out, which is why I had to pick up those figures when they came out. This was a nice line. Again, you got lots and lots. My only complaint with this line is they're a little short on villains. They made tons of different variations of Batman himself, and they only made a few villains. They got Blight back there. They made one of the Jokers, the Joker gang. Then they made some Joker thugs, the big guy and the little guy here. But other than that, they didn't. They could have made, I would have loved to have seen Ink. I would have loved to have seen Plastique and several other villains, but maybe the line just got canceled before they did it. But alas, that's what we got. And again, nice set of figures. The only one that's probably more rare than the others is the Terry McGinnis on the motorcycle. He fetches a pretty good price, but other than that, fairly inexpensive line to collect. If you're looking at it, that is a complete set that you're seeing of Batman Beyond. I don't see a lot of these at toy shows for some reason, so they may be harder to come across, but with the new interest in the new Batman Beyond movie, I imagine these things are going to go up in value, which is nice, because that is a full set, so there's nothing else I need out of this, but a great line. You can see they had really, really great card backs. Behind there, kind of the metallic finish on them, so it really makes them stand out. Lots of purples, lots of blacks. Awesome toy line. So guys, that is the Hall of Heroes, and I'm glad you guys checked in. I'm sorry it's so long. I keep saying I'm going to go shorter, and then there's just so much I want to be able to have for you. Stay tuned. I've got one more part of the tour, and that's once we round the corner from the Hall of Heroes, we'll go down and we'll hit what's called Sportsman's Park, I like to call it, and that is my starting lineup collection that I have, and then that will be everything. So thanks for tuning in. Happy 4th of July. Please take a chance and take a look at my collection and subscribe. I would love that. I'd love to get into this and have some people subscribe, just more people to share ideas with and collections with, and just see what you guys are doing out there. But take care of yourselves. Bye.